Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed. At 1,000 subscribers, I'll be posting a special video. My name is Jake, and my wrist ripped out of her grip that night. I am 27, and I reacted like I was 16 again. Her fingers had just pushed my hand lower, guiding me without a word. I yanked back so hard the mattress shifted under us. She froze in place, and the air went sharp between us. For a second I hoped she had not noticed how fast I moved. That is stupid now that I think about it. Your own partner feels every tiny movement in that space. She kept her hand hovering near my arm and did not touch me again. My skin crawled, and I hated that feeling instantly. "What's wrong?" Her voice came out low, almost flat, like she already knew. I stared at the ceiling and tried to swallow the lump in my throat. "I just feel off," I muttered, dragging the words out slow on purpose. I figured if I sounded tired enough, she might accept it. She pulled her hand back to her chest and tucked it under her chin. I could not see her face clearly, but her body went tense and small. The space between us felt wider than it actually was in that moment. I heard one long inhale, then nothing for a few seconds. It sounded like she bit down on whatever she really wanted to ask. Inside my chest, everything pounded and twisted like it was trying to get out. My brain kept flashing the same ugly image I did not ask for. Not her now, not us, just that thing from her childhood. The more I tried to push it away, the more it rushed back. My body answered it with a wave of nausea that hit fast. I told myself to relax and just lean over and kiss her neck. That was our usual move, easy and familiar, like a script that never failed. I lifted my arm, stopped halfway, and let it drop back on the sheet. I could not make myself close that distance, not even an inch. I swear I felt her flinch at the sound of my arm hitting the bed. "You're pulling away again." Her words landed soft, but they cut clean. There was no anger in them, just this quiet disappointment that hurt worse. "I'm not," I answered too quickly, and I heard my own lie. She turned her head slightly, like she wanted to see if I would try harder. Silence stretched out and started to feel heavy instead of calm. I could hear the faint buzz of my phone on the nightstand. I did not reach for it because that would look like escape. Instead, I stared into the dark and counted my breaths like an idiot. Every breath felt like a timer ticking down to something breaking. She shifted away from me, inch by inch, as if I might shatter. The blanket moved with her and left my side weirdly exposed. I wanted to pull her back, wrap my arm around her, act normal. My hand hovered over her hip and never landed, just shook there. I knew she could feel the gap, and I knew what she thought it meant. "Do you still want me?" The question came out so quiet I almost pretended I missed it. My first instinct was to answer fast, smooth, no hesitation. Instead, I hesitated for one stupid second, and that was enough. That pause said more than any sentence I could throw on top of it. "Yes, of course I do," I finally said, forcing my voice steady. I reached forward and laid my palm between her shoulder blades. Her muscles tightened under my touch like a pulled wire. She did not move closer, did not move further, just stayed locked there. My hand started to feel like it did not belong on her back anymore. "Then why does it feel different now?" She asked it straight, no sugar, no attempt to soften the blow. I felt my mouth open and close before any sound came out. "Because of what you told me," sat right there on my tongue. The words burned and I swallowed them down, which made everything worse. "I'm just stressed," I offered, and even I hated that excuse. "Work, money, whatever," I almost added random reasons just to fill space. I knew she would see through it because she is not stupid. Still, I grabbed that weak line like it was the last rope left. I watched her shoulders rise and fall once, like she had expected exactly that. She rolled onto her back and stared up into the dark above us. I turned my head to watch her profile, searching for some clue. Her jaw clenched, then relaxed, like she kept trying to steady herself. No tears, no outburst, which somehow scared me even more. When someone you love goes that quiet, you know trouble is coming. "After I told you about my past, things changed." She did not need to say what passed or when she told me. We both knew the night she meant, the one that flipped us. "I feel like you look at me different now," she added. The worst part is she was right, and I had no idea how to fix it. I wanted to argue, to tell her she imagined it, that nothing changed. But my own body had just betrayed me clear as day. You cannot claim everything is fine when you just ripped away from a touch. So I stayed quiet, which probably sounded like agreement instead of confusion. My silence sat there between us like a third person listening. I am tired, she said finally, and turned back onto her side. The way she said it did not mean tired from the day. It sounded like tired of this conversation, tired of guessing my thoughts. She pulled the blanket up to her ear and tucked her chin down. I lay there on my back, wide awake, feeling like the bad guy in my own bed. I tried to reach for her one more time, small and careful. My fingers brushed her elbow, and she did not pull away. So I let them rest there like a weak apology I could not say out loud. It felt like touching someone who was already halfway gone. I knew this was not the last time we would talk about that night. Back then I still believed I could fake my way through it. Smile more, crack jokes, push the ugly thoughts down deep. She did not need to carry my reaction on top of her own pain. At least that is what I told myself while I stared into the dark. I had no clue I would end up telling strangers before I told her the full truth. The movie froze because her thumb slammed the remote. The sound cut out mid-scene and the room went quiet fast. She kept the remote pointed at the screen like a weapon. Her other hand gripped her knee until her knuckles stood out. Right then I knew this was not about the movie at all. I need to tell you something messed up. Her voice came out lower than usual, almost dry. She did not look at me, not even a quick glance. She stared straight ahead like the wall might answer back. My chest tightened because I already feared the direction. I wanted to crack a dumb joke and kill the mood shift. Something like we were not breaking up over a bad film. The words reached the back of my throat, then died there. Her shoulders were shaking just enough to warn me off. This was bigger than my usual deflection tricks. What happened? It slipped out before I could smooth it, plain and direct. I set the remote on the table to keep my hands busy. If I did not move them, they would tap from nerves. She noticed and pulled her knees closer like she was bracing. Promise you won't look at me different. She pressed her forehead down against her wrist as she spoke. That request hit harder than anything that came after it. Because you only say that when you already expect the opposite. When you already braced for someone to flinch without meaning to. I can't promise that. The truth came out too honest, too fast, no polish. She lifted her head a little, eyes wet but focused. I can promise I will not run, I added quickly. Even then I knew how weak that sounded compared to what she feared. She nodded once like she would take whatever she could get. Then she inhaled slowly, like each breath needed permission. My first time was not really a first time, she began. I felt my back press harder into the couch without meaning to. Something in my brain whispered that I already knew where this went. It was someone my family trusted. Her hands moved as she talked, fingers tracing invisible shapes. Older, way older, they watched me when my parents worked. Her lip trembled around that word watched, and I wanted to punch something. She kept talking because stopping would mean never starting again. He made it a game at first. She swallowed hard, eyes flicking away from mine. Little dares, little secrets, stuff that felt wrong but confusing. My stomach churned and my palms grew slick just hearing it. I forced myself to stay still so she knew I was there. She described how it escalated, step by step over time. She never used graphic language, but my brain filled gaps anyway. The worst part was her tone stayed eerily calm through it. Like she had practiced this speech alone 100 times already. Like she had filed the story away and pulled it out on request. I felt heat rise in my face, not in a good way. Every detail made my jaw clamp down harder. A grown man choosing a child because she could not fight back. I wanted his name, his address, the chance to break something. That urge scared me almost as much as her story. At one point her voice cut out mid-sentence. She stared at the floor like a scene played there. Both hands flattened against her thighs to steady herself. For a second I thought she might stand up and leave. Instead she exhaled sharply and pushed through the next part. I never told anyone, she whispered, barely above a breath. Not my mom's, not my dad, not any boyfriend. That last word hung between us like an accusation. I had to fight the reflexive thought that I was special. This was not about me earning some twisted honor. Why now? I asked softer, leaning closer without touching her. She shrugged one shoulder in a tired little motion. Because you keep asking why I freeze certain ways in bed. That line lodged in my throat like a stone. She had noticed more than I admitted during those moments. Guilt washed over me so sudden I almost flinched. I thought about every time I had nudged for more. Every playful comment that probably felt like pressure to her. I had framed it as normal couple stuff, casual curiosity. Hearing it through her filter made it sound much harsher. I thought it was just preferences, I muttered, feeling stupid. She gave a short laugh that had zero humor in it. Some preferences are glued to survival, she answered quietly. I learned early that freezing makes things end faster. That sentence replayed in my head on a loop. She told me how she used to blame herself for not fighting. How she wondered if she had somehow invited it. I could hear years of shame packed into every word. She rubbed her fingers together like she tried to scrub something off. I hated that I could not reach back in time and yank her away. I know logically it was not my fault, she said. My brain knows, my body still disagrees most days. That split made too much sense and not enough at once. I nodded slowly because arguing with her body response felt pointless. I had no right to tell her how to heal. Without really thinking, I moved closer and wrapped an arm around her. She stayed stiff for a heartbeat, then leaned into my chest. Her cheek pressed against my shirt and dampened it. I rubbed small circles on her shoulder to keep her grounded. Inside my skull, everything screamed that this should have never happened to her. She pulled back a few inches and searched my face. Do you think I am disgusting now? The raw fear in that sentence almost broke me open. I shook my head fast, words rushing out on instinct. No, he is only him, not you, never you. I meant that, and I still mean it while I write this. But there is a gap between what you believe and what hits you later. Back then I thought those lines would be enough. I thought a strong embrace and a few firm promises could cover it. I underestimated how stubborn the mind can be when it fixates. I was worried you would leave if you knew, she admitted. Her eyes searched mine for any sign of doubt. I tightened my grip around her and pulled her closer. I am not going anywhere, I told her, steady this time. The more I reassured her, the more I tried to convince myself too. We sat like that while the Frozen movie glared at us. She wiped her face on her sleeve and breathed slower. I do not want this to ruin what we have, she said. That is why I am telling you now before it sneaks in. That line would haunt me later because it did sneak in anyway. I grabbed the remote and muted the screen completely. Do you want to keep talking or distract ourselves? I asked. She thought for a bit, then leaned back against the cushions. Stay here with me, just hold me, no pressure, she answered. That last part landed like a quiet test I was terrified to fail. So I wrapped both arms around her and settled in. Her breathing evened out against my chest, slow and steady. At some point, her fingers started tracing the veins on my hand. The touch was innocent, almost childlike, but my thoughts twisted. I hated that they did, and I buried that reaction deep. She talked a little more, in broken bits and pieces. She mentioned certain triggers, certain jokes that made her shut down. She asked if I could avoid those, nothing dramatic, just small adjustments. I agreed to everything, eager to be the good partner. Saying yes felt easy in that moment, almost too easy. Are you sure you are okay hearing all this? She asked again. I nodded, maybe a little too fast, trying to look solid. I would rather know than accidentally hurt you, I answered. That part was completely real, no performance at all. She relaxed a fraction more and rested her head under my chin. She reached for my hand and guided it around her waist. This time the contact felt gentle, not charged. I allowed myself to breathe like the worst was over. We listened to the quiet for a while, just hearts beating. Back then, I mistook that quiet for safety instead of a pause. Eventually, the movie timer dimmed and the screen went dark. It pulled us back into the room like a light switch. She straightened up and wiped her eyes one more time. Thanks for not freaking out, she murmured with a small smile. I forced my own smile to match, hoping she could not read through it. Because under all the comfort and anger and love, something else sat. A small knot of unease I could not name yet. Images I did not want, crowding the edges of my thoughts. I told myself they would fade once the shock passed. I had no idea those same images would later show up at the worst possible time. The next time she climbed on top of me, my body quit halfway. Her hair brushed my chest, her hands pressed into my shoulders. She shifted her hips, waiting for me to respond the way I used to. Everything should have been hot and simple and automatic. Instead, my mind threw up a picture that did not belong there. I saw an older hand on smaller legs, and everything inside me recoiled. Why muscles tightened like they were bracing for impact, not pleasure. I tried to focus on her breathing, on the weight of her thighs. The memory that is not mine kept pushing forward like a bad replay. My stomach lurched and I felt myself go soft while she was still moving. She paused above me, searching my face for a clue. "You okay?" The question sounded casual, but I heard the strain underneath. "Yeah, I just lost it for a second," I forced out with a dry laugh. Nothing about that moment felt funny, not to either of us. She shifted off me and lay on her back, staring at the ceiling. I rolled onto my side, pretending to adjust the blanket. The tension between us was loud, even with no one talking. I could feel her brain spinning, trying to make sense of it. I already knew which secret she would blame for this and stayed quiet. Later in the shower, I leaned my head against the tile. Water hit my shoulders, but my thoughts were somewhere else. Any attempt to picture her, in a loving way, twisted into that other scene. My jaw clenched and I cursed at myself under the noise. I hated that I could not separate our intimacy from what he did. I caught myself checking my own reflection, searching for something off. Did I look different since she told me, like some switch flipped? Of course I looked the same, just more tired, a little worn down. Still, I kept staring like I might spot a hidden flaw. I wondered if she saw that same change when she looked at me. At work, I opened my phone every chance I got. Instead of scrolling mindlessly, this time I went straight to search. I typed "dating someone who survived childhood abuse" and hit enter. Article titles stacked on the screen, all sounding very reasonable. My pulse hammered anyway, like I was doing something wrong. Most of the stories came from partners who sounded noble and steady. They talked about being patient and gentle and endlessly supportive. They described learning new ways to be close, on the survivor's terms. They admitted frustration, but never the kind of disgust I felt. Reading them made me feel less alone and more broken at the same time. One post mentioned intrusive images, and my heart jumped. I thought, finally someone gets it, I am not crazy. Then I read the comments, and people rushed to correct the writer. They framed it as empathy, as feeling their partner's pain too deeply. No one said, "Sometimes I feel physically revolted and I hate that." A coworker walked past my desk and I locked my screen too fast. The motion looked guilty, like I had been hiding something dirty. "Big secrets are just slacking off," he joked as he passed. I forced a grin and mumbled something about stupid news. He moved on and I sat there buzzing with shame. At home that night, she curled up next to me on the couch. She tucked her feet under my thigh like always, seeking contact. The movie played, but I barely registered what was happening. My focus was on the way her toes brushed my leg. Every innocent touch felt like a test I was failing quietly. When her hand slid under my shirt, my breath hitched. It should have been a good thing, a sign we were okay. My brain picked that exact second to replay her words about freezing. About how going still made things end faster with him. My body tensed in a way she could not miss. She withdrew her hand and folded her arms across her chest. "You keep flinching without saying anything," she murmured, eyes on the screen. The volume on the movie sounded too loud all of a sudden. "I'm just tired," I repeated, because that excuse had become my shield. Every time I used it, it felt flimsier and more obvious. She did not push that night, but the distance grew anyway. We went to bed earlier than usual, each on our own side. We lay in the dark, both pretending to drift off fast. I stared at the faint outline of the window, counting breaths again. The more I tried to relax, the more rigid I became. This became a pattern almost without me noticing the shift. She would reach, I would tense, then I would lie about why. Some nights I would initiate and steer things very carefully. I avoided any position that brought back that specific mental image. She picked up on that too, of course she did. One night she traced a line along my chest and paused. "You only like certain things now," she whispered into the quiet. Her tone was light, but I could hear the question hidden inside. "I just like seeing your face," I answered, kissing her forehead. The truth was I avoided anything that might trigger that old scene. I caught myself policing her movements in bed, which felt awful. If she moved in a way that reminded me of a younger posture, I panicked. I would rearrange us with some playful comment, pretending it was preference. On the surface, it might have looked normal, just a couple experimenting. Inside, I was trying to outrun a memory that was not even mine. Eventually, the anxiety bled into other parts of my day. A random commercial would show a teenager, and I would tense up. A joke at work about "you like them young" made my skin crawl. My coworkers laughed while I forced a thin smile to fit in. They had no clue what kind of landmine that joke stepped on in my head. One afternoon in the break room, I overheard a story about a friend's ex. Apparently, the guy had dated someone younger and got called a creep. Everyone piled on, throwing the word around casually, loud and easy. My appetite vanished and my hands shook around my coffee cup. I realized I had started to fear that word landing on me someday. Not because I wanted anything like that, but because of how my mind reacted. It felt like my own thoughts were dirty, even though I hated them. I started tracking every image, every reaction like a secret ledger. If something aroused me even slightly, I examined it under a microscope. That kind of self-interrogation does not end well, in case you wonder. At home, she noticed my distance creeping into regular conversations. "You zone out a lot lately," she pointed out during dinner. I shrugged and poked at my food like it might answer for me. "Just stressed," I muttered again, that useless word hanging between us. She studied my face like she was trying to recognize a stranger. "Is this about what I told you?" she asked one night in bed. The way she phrased it made my chest clamp tight. Part of me wanted to grab that opening and finally be honest. Another part screamed that saying it out loud would destroy us. So I dodged with a half-truth that tasted like metal. "It is not your fault I am weird," I said, attempting a grin. She did not laugh, and that landed harder than any insult. "I never said it was my fault," she replied quietly, turning away. Her shoulders curled in, and I watched the gap between us widen. I lay there pinned by my own cowardice. That night I took my phone into the hallway bathroom. I locked the door and sat on the edge of the tub. I opened a new search, and this time I got more specific. "Partner feels disgusted after hearing about childhood trauma," I typed. Just seeing those words together made me feel like a monster. The results were all over the place, from forums to blogs. Some people were blunt, saying if you feel that way you should leave. Others talked about misplaced anger, about trauma contaminating intimacy. One comment suggested that disgust can be a shield for fear. I wanted that to be true because the alternative felt unforgivable. I did not post anything that night, just scrolled endlessly. Kept reading other people's confessions and trying to find myself in them. Most of them focused on how to comfort their partner, not their own reactions. Very few admitted to feeling repulsed, and those who did got dragged. I absorbed every harsh reply like it was written straight at me. Sitting there under the bathroom fan, I made a quiet promise. I would never use that word with her, not even close. I would swallow it, bury it, wrap it in better-sounding language. I convinced myself that as long as she never heard it, we were safe. That was the night I chose silence over honesty, and it would cost us later. Her toothbrush hit the sink edge hard enough to splash my shirt. We were side by side at the mirror, foam in our mouths. She stopped brushing and just watched my reflection instead of her own. "You jerked away from me again," she said around the toothpaste. My stomach dropped before I even rinsed my mouth. I spat, ran water, stalled for a few seconds. "I was half asleep," I muttered, not looking up. Her laugh came out sharp and humorless over the running tap. "You were not asleep when you recoiled like that," she answered. The word recoiled sliced straight through my flimsy excuse. She turned the faucet off with more force than needed. "I keep offering and you act like I burned you," she said. I finally met her eyes in the mirror and saw it. Not anger first, hurt, then anger climbing right behind it. I hated that both were aimed straight at me. "You know it is not that simple," I tried. She tilted her head slightly, jaw locked, waiting for more. I gripped the edge of the sink until my knuckles ached. "Then explain it," she pushed, voice low and steady. "Because from here it feels like you cannot stand touching me." That line landed harder than anything my own brain had thrown. I never said I cannot stand it, I fired back. My voice came out louder than I meant and bounced off tile. She flinched at the volume but waited, eyes burning into me. I realized I had already lost the calm tone I wanted. This started after I told you, she said, pointing toward the bedroom. Her finger shook, which somehow made the gesture more intense. Before that, you could barely keep your hands off me. She sucked in a breath like she had to force the next part. Now each time I reach, you act like I am doing something wrong. That is not fair, I snapped, even though part of me agreed. She raised her eyebrows like she could see that flicker of agreement. Really, so it is a coincidence the timing lines up exactly, she pressed. Every word she used pinned me further into a corner. I felt something in me start to boil just from sheer panic. I am trying, okay, I insisted, waving a hand between us. Trying what? She shot back immediately, taking a step closer. To forget what I told you, to pretend you never heard it. That was not what I meant, but that is how it sounded. Her eyes went wide like I had slapped her. She took one step back, then another, like she needed space. I finally trusted you with the worst thing in my life, she said. And your solution is to try to erase it from your head. Her throat worked like she was trying not to choke. If you wanted easy sex, you picked the wrong person. That is not what I want, I answered, softer this time. I reached out, aiming for her forearm for any contact. She pulled away before my hand touched her skin. That tiny dodge hurt more than any shout would have. For once, I was the one being avoided. Then tell me the truth, she demanded, voice shaking now. When we are in bed and I move closer, what happens? She planted herself in the doorway like she blocked my escape. You freeze, your face changes, then you shut it down. I had never felt so studied and dissected in my own bathroom. In my head, the honest answer lined up too clearly. I see you and then I see him touching you. I tried to push the thought away even while she stared. Nothing happens, I lied, and it sounded pathetic in the air. Her shoulders dropped like she had expected that dodge. She turned toward the hall as if the argument was over. Something inside me snapped at the idea of her walking away. Fine, you want the truth, I blurted, voice cracking a little. She stopped with her hand on the doorframe and glanced back. That one look forced the next sentence out of my mouth. Ever since you told me, it feels different in my head. The words tumbled out too fast to edit. When we hook up, my brain drags your past into it. I heard myself and wanted to swallow the sentence back. Her fingers tightened on the wood like she needed support. So you picture that instead of us, she asked quietly. Her tone had dropped, but there was nothing soft in it. Not instead, it just shows up, I stammered, hating every syllable. It is like a flash and it makes me shut down. The more I tried to clarify, the worse it sounded. Her eyes glossed over and she let out a short breath. So when you look at me naked, you see him too, she whispered. I opened my mouth, then paused for that deadly split second. I should have denied it right there, even if it was complicated. That silence did more damage than anything I actually said. She laughed once, a hard, broken sound that did not match her face. Got it, she muttered, wiping under one eye with the side of her hand. I am walking around with his fingerprints in your head. She shook her head slowly, like she could dislodge the idea. You realize you just confirmed my worst nightmare. I am disgusted by him, I rushed out, stepping forward again. By what he did, by what he turned into for you. I jabbed a finger toward my own temple, almost frantic. My reactions are messed up, not your body, not you. Even to me, that draw line sounded thin and technical. She narrowed her eyes, really taking in my face. Do you hear yourself? She asked, voice raw and uneven. You say you are revolted by him, but you still see it with me. Her lip trembled and she bit it to keep it still. How am I supposed to separate that when you clearly cannot? I dragged a hand through my hair and paced in the tiny space. I did not choose these images, I snapped, gesturing at my head. They just hit me and I am trying to fight them. I knew I sounded defensive, maybe even selfish in that moment. I hated that I was asking her for grace while wounding her. She leaned against the frame, suddenly looking exhausted. I told you my history so we could be closer, she said. So I would not freak out alone during certain things. She pressed her thumb into her palm like she needed an anchor. Instead, I handed you a reason to feel grossed out by me. Hearing that word from her mouth twisted something sharp inside me. I am not grossed out by you, I argued, stepping closer again. I am scared of hurting you, scared of liking something wrong. The last part slipped out before I could reshape it. Her head snapped up and she stared at me like I had confessed a crime. What do you mean liking something wrong? She asked slowly. I froze, realizing I had crossed into territory I never wanted to name. I mean, I question myself, I answered, voice barely above a whisper. Like if I am turned on, maybe it is connected to that story. Saying T out loud made me feel filthy, like I had confirmed her worst suspicions. So now you worry you are some kind of creep, she stated. Because you are with me, someone who got assaulted as a kid. She pushed off the frame and took a step toward me. Do you even hear how that sounds to me right now? I could not answer without either lying or confirming it. The silence stretched so long the fan became the only sound. Her expression shifted from pain to something colder. If being with me makes you feel like a predator, she said slowly, then how am I supposed to feel safe letting you touch me? That question hit like a punch because I did not have a clean answer. I reached for her hand one more time, desperate to fix something. She let me catch her fingers but did not squeeze back. I need help with this, I admitted, voice cracking. Therapy or something, I do not want my messed up head to define you. Her eyes flicked to our joined hands, then back to my face. Then why am I hearing this now? She asked, pulling away. After months of you backing off and calling it stress. She turned toward the hallway again, shoulders tight. You let me think it was because I was not attractive anymore. That last line made my cheeks burn hot with shame. She walked to the bedroom and started yanking drawers open. I stood in the doorway, useless, watching her gather clothes. Where are you going? I managed, leaning on the frame. Living room, she answered, stuffing a shirt into a bag. I cannot share a bed with someone who recoils from me and calls it fear. I never said recoil, I protested, knowing how weak that sounded. You did not have to, she threw back over her shoulder. You said enough when you hesitated, when you pictured him. She zipped the bag with one hard motion that made me jump. Congratulations, he gets to live rent-free in one more relationship. She brushed past me with the bag banging against her hip. I caught the faint smell of her shampoo as she moved by. That tiny familiar thing hit harder than any of our words. I did not want this, I said to her back, almost pleading. She paused for half a heartbeat, then kept walking down the hall. That night the couch springs creaked every time she shifted. I lay in our bed staring at the empty space beside me. My phone glowed in my hand while my thumb hovered over a new post. I typed out a title, then deleted it, then typed again. Somewhere between shame and desperation, I decided anonymous strangers might hear me before she ever could again. I hit submit and watched my post jump onto the front page of that subreddit. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. In the other room, I could hear the couch creak when she shifted. For a second, I considered deleting everything before anyone replied. Then the first notification popped up and that choice vanished. The title glared back at me like a dare. Partner told me about childhood assault, now I feel sick during sex. I had rewritten that line 20 times before I settled on it. It still made me look awful, but at least it was honest. Or as honest as I could be without vomiting. Comments started stacking faster than I expected. My screen filled with small boxes of judgment and advice. I refreshed again, then again, like some anxious reflex. Every new number in the corner made my heart jolt. I already knew this was a terrible idea, and I kept reading anyway. The first few replies were blunt and angry. Break up with her, she deserves better. Imagine telling your traumatized girlfriend she turns you off. Do not touch her again, you creep. Each line landed like a slap I had kind of signed up for. I wanted to argue with every stranger calling me that word. I wanted to tell them about the way I held her after she cried. About how furious I was at the man who hurt her. About how none of this disgust felt chosen or welcome. Instead, I just kept scrolling, letting the insults pile up. One person wrote, "You are using her trauma as an excuse to be cruel." That one hit differently because part of me feared it was true. I replayed the bathroom scene in my head, the hesitation, the phrasing. I saw her face when I admitted the images in my head. The comment pinned that scene to the screen like proof. Underneath the dog pile, a longer response appeared. Your reaction sounds like secondary trauma and anxiety, not secret desire. They talked about how minds sometimes latch onto the worst possible angle. How disgust can be a warped form of fear or rage. I read that paragraph 3 times, clinging to every sentence. Another user chimed in under that one. Still, your girlfriend is not your therapist, and she is already carrying enough. They told me to find a professional before unloading anything else on her. They reminded me that she cannot fix the pictures in my head. I hated that they were right and also felt grateful they said it. Hi-fi. Nally replied to one of the calmer comments. I typed out a rushed explanation about loving her and hating this reaction. I wrote that I had never, not once, been attracted to minors. I admitted I now checked my own thoughts like a paranoid cop. My thumb hovered before I tapped send, then I pushed it through. Dude, that self-policing is exactly why you need therapy, someone responded. They pointed out how obsessive guilt can twist innocent attraction. How shame can actually glue the images in place instead of clearing them. The idea that my own self-hatred might be making things worse shook me. Up until then, I believed punishing myself was the only moral option. Mixed in with the decent takes were a few brutal ones. Your disgust is the honest part, everything else is you pretending, one wrote. That sentence lodged in my spine and would not move. I found myself reading it over and over like evidence. As if some stranger had finally named the worst version of me. Hours slipped while I argued silently with people who did not know me. I composed replies, deleted them, rewrote shorter ones. Anytime I tried to defend myself, I sounded defensive even to me. Anytime I agreed with their criticism, I felt like I was confessing a crime. There was no answer that made me feel clean. At one point, I heard her cough from the other room. I froze with my fingers on the keys and held my breath. If she walked in and saw that screen, everything would implode. I tilted the phone away from the doorway like a teenager hiding porn. The irony of that did not help. I opened my own post again and reread the original text. Seeing my words in that block made them feel more real. I described the nausea, the flashbacks, the way my body tensed. I admitted I had pulled away during intimacy and lied about why. Right there in black and white, I looked exactly like the villain. A notification came in from a private message. For a second, I thought it would be another insult. Instead, it was someone sharing that they had felt something similar. They wrote about dating a survivor and vomiting after one encounter. They called it their lowest moment and begged me to get help early. Reading that message, I did not feel comforted, not exactly. But I did feel slightly less like the only freak on the planet. They mentioned that therapy had separated their partner from the abuser in their mind. That sentence stuck to me more than the rest of the story. It sounded like proof that my brain was not frozen in this state forever. Another user responded under my post with a harsh but fair line. You are allowed to feel what you feel, you are not allowed to make it her problem. I stared at that sentence so long my eyes burned. Because that was exactly what I had done in the bathroom argument. Thrown my horror at her feet and expected her to understand it. My phone battery warning popped up, red and accusing. I plugged it in by the bed and sat on the floor instead. I could still hear faint rustling from where she slept down the hall. The distance between us felt bigger than the walls in the apartment. I was spilling my guts to internet strangers while she lay alone. A new comment asked, "What do you actually want from posting this?" I set the phone down for a second, then picked it right back up. What did I want? Validation, punishment, instructions. I typed, I want to know if I am fixable or just awful. I erased the last 2 words, then posted it anyway. Replies came back fast. Nobody on Reddit can judge your entire character. Your behavior so far has been selfish, but you are not doomed. If you stay, do the work. If you leave, do it cleanly. Each response pulled me in a different direction and left me dizzy. One person spelled out what I had been dodging. If you stay with her while secretly recoiling inside, she will feel it. Trauma survivors are experts at sensing withdrawal, it will destroy her. I had watched that prediction start to come true in real time. Seeing it articulated by a stranger made it impossible to ignore. I started drafting an update to the post. Update, I admitted to her that the images pop up. Update, she is furious and sleeping in another room. Update, I do not know if we are still together tomorrow. Each line felt like a step closer to making it official. In the end, I deleted the draft and left no update. I was too ashamed for anyone to see how fast things had crumbled. Too scared someone might tell me I deserved to be alone. I closed the app and the room went strangely quiet without notifications. The silence felt heavier than any comment. I lay back on the bed and stared up, phone on my chest. My head throbbed from all the conflicting voices I had just inhaled. The cruel ones, the kind ones, the practical ones. They all blended into a single message in my mind. Fix this or walk away, but stop killing her with half-truths. From down the hall, the couch creaked again and then stayed still. I pictured her curled up with a blanket, eyes puffy, staring at nothing. I knew tomorrow I would have to speak to her, not to screens. The thought of that conversation scared me more than any online reply. Because there would be no username to hide behind, just her face. Her duffel waited by the door when I walked out of the bedroom. The zipper was pulled tight, the strap looped over the handle like a hand. She sat at the table with a mug she was not drinking from. For a second, I just stood there barefoot, listening to my own pulse. I knew if she picked that bag up, we were done. Morning. My voice came out rough like I had swallowed sand. She did not answer right away, just tracked me with tired eyes. You sleep at all? I tried again, moving toward the table. She gave the smallest shrug, which told me everything I needed. I sat across from her and wrapped my fingers around nothing. The empty feeling made my hands twitch, so I laced them together. We cannot keep pretending this is normal, she finally said. Her eyes dropped to the table, then lifted back to me. In your head, I am tied to him during sex now. Hearing it that blunt still knocked the air out of me. I do not want that, I said, forcing the words slow. Wanting has nothing to do with it, she cut in, jaw tight. You showed me exactly what is going on inside you. She tapped her temple with one knuckle, a sharp little gesture. I swallowed because this was the moment I had stalled. There is something else I need to tell you, I started. Her eyebrows lifted just a fraction, like she braced for impact. If this is another confession that makes me feel filthy, she warned. Maybe skip it and let me go now. It is not that, I rushed, shaking my head. My chest felt cramped, like there was no room for breath. I posted about us online last night, I blurted. The sentence hit the air and immediately sounded worse aloud. Her whole face went still in a way that scared me. You what? Her fingers tightened around the mug so hard I heard a faint crack. Where, she asked, the word cutting clean across the table. On a relationship forum, I answered, voice barely above a whisper. Anonymous, no names, just the situation and my reaction. She laughed once, that short broken sound I had learned to dread. So random strangers know I was abused as a child now, she said. Her eyes glistened but her expression stayed hard. You shared the thing I could not tell my own family, she added. That sentence dug under my ribs and stayed there. I left every detail vague, I pushed, feeling panic rise again. No locations, no identifying stuff, just that my partner had trauma. I knew how weak that sounded even as I said it. I needed advice from people outside my head, I added. I was scared I was turning into something disgusting. So you did not trust me with that fear, she replied quietly. You trusted screen names and upvotes instead. She released the mug and rubbed her thumb across the table. Did it feel good to get sympathy for having a broken girlfriend? Her voice shook on broken, and I wanted to crawl out of my skin. It was not sympathy, I answered, leaning forward. Half of them called me a monster and told me to leave you. I let out a humorless breath that was almost a laugh. Honestly, I kind of agreed with them for a minute, I admitted. Because what kind of person feels sick around someone they love? She blinked slowly, taking that in piece by piece. In the other half, she asked, wrapping her arms around herself. They told me this looked like panic, not secret desire, I said. They talked about secondary trauma and intrusive images and shame. I watched her face flicker at the word shame like it echoed hers. Do you realize how much this sounds like you centering yourself? She asked. You are the one spiraling, so my assault becomes your meltdown story. She shook her head and looked away toward the door. I am not saying your reaction is fake, she added, softer. I am saying I am the one who actually lived it. I know, I answered, and I meant it in my bones. My hands opened on the table, palms up, completely empty. I am not asking you to comfort me about this, I said. I am telling you I cannot control these flashes yet, and it is wrecking us. Saying yet was the first hopeful word I had used in days. She studied my face like she did not trust that hope. Did any of your internet geniuses tell you what to do next? She asked. One of them messaged me privately, I said, throat tight again. They said they had gone through something similar with their partner. They said therapy helped them separate the abuser from the person they loved. Therapy for who? She asked, eyes narrowing a little. For me, I answered immediately, hand pressing over my chest. I cannot keep dumping this confusion on you and calling it honest. Why? I need someone trained to untangle why my brain glues you to him. I paused, then forced the next part out anyway. I want you to come to one session, I said. Not to fix me, just to have someone neutral in the room. If you hear a professional say this is treatable, maybe you will feel safer. And if they say I am dangerous, you will know to walk, I added. Her eyebrows shot up at that, like she had not expected that line. You would actually sit there and risk hearing that? She asked. Her voice dropped, but there was a tiny spark behind it. Yes, I said without hesitation, and for once it felt solid. I would rather hear something ugly in that office than keep guessing here. The guessing is killing both of us in slow motion. She looked past me toward the bedroom, then back to the door. Do you even want to stay with me? She asked after a moment. Or are you just clinging because you are afraid of what leaving means? I had asked myself that exact question at 3 a.m. Hearing it out loud hit different. I want you, I said, and my voice cracked halfway through want. Not your trauma, not some twisted story in my head, you. I also know wanting you is not enough if I keep hurting you. So this is me saying I will do the work or I will let you go. The last sentence scared me as much as it probably scared her. Silence settled between us for a few heavy beats. She slid her chair back and walked to the doorway slowly. Her fingers closed around the duffel strap, testing the weight. For a second I thought she would lift it and not look back. Instead, she let the handle drop and leaned against the wall. If I go to this session, she said, eyes fixed on the floor, I am not promising anything more than that 1 hour. Her hand moved up to rub the side of her neck. I am not promising forgiveness, I am not promising sex, nothing. I am only promising to hear what this therapist thinks about you. That is more than I deserve right now, I answered quietly. It was true whether she believed me or not. I will find someone who understands this stuff, I added. Not just a random counselor who tells us to light candles. I need someone who will call me out if I am twisting this. She huffed out a breath that was almost a laugh, almost a sob. If I hear you blame me in that room, I am done, she said. If you ever toss my past at me again during a fight, I am done. Her eyes finally met mine, sharp and wet. I will not let you turn what he did into a weapon in your mouth. A fresh wave of shame washed over me hearing it framed like that. Images from the bathroom scene flickered through my head again. The way I had used the phrase liking something wrong as a shield. The way she had heard it as proof I saw her as contaminated. I will not do that again, I said, and this time I believed myself. She pushed off the wall and moved back toward the table. Instead of sitting, she rested her hands on the chair back. You need to make that appointment today, she said. Not next week, not when you feel brave, today. If I see you drag your feet on this, I am packing that bag again. I can call as soon as offices open, I replied, nodding. My mind already raced through searches and phone numbers. I will tell them exactly what I told those strangers and more, I added. No sugarcoating, no leaving out the disgusting parts because I am embarrassed. If I lie in there, we might as well break up now. She watched me for a long moment like she measured my sincerity. Then she walked around the table and stopped at my side. Her hand hovered above my shoulder before finally landing there. The touch was light, almost cautious, but it was touch. Book it on speaker, she said. I need to hear that you actually do it. So I picked up my phone right there at the table. My fingers trembled as I brought up the search for counselors. I found a listing that mentioned trauma and couples work. Dialed the number with her standing over me like a skeptical witness. My heart hammered so hard I could hear it in my ears. When the receptionist answered, my voice came out thin. "I need an appointment about intrusive thoughts related to my girlfriend's assault," I said. The word assault felt heavy but necessary on my tongue. I gave my details, took the earliest slot they had available. All while she listened, arms folded, eyes unreadable. After I hung up, I set the phone down between us. "Friday," I told her, 3 in the afternoon. They said partners are welcome. She nodded once, then looked at the duffel by the door again. Slowly, she walked over and nudged it away from the exit with her foot. Not back to the closet, just a few inches off the threshold. "Do not read into that," she warned, noticing my eyes on the bag. "It just means I am willing to wait and see what Friday brings." She pressed her palms against the table, grounding herself. "In the meantime, no sex," she added, voice firm. "I cannot handle your panic and my shame colliding in that space right now." "That is fair," I answered, even though it hurt to hear. Physical closeness had always been the place I felt most confident. Now it was the most dangerous room in the house for both of us. I would have to learn how to show affection without leaning on that. That thought terrified me almost as much as losing her outright. She walked past me toward the couch where she had slept. Halfway there, she paused and looked back over her shoulder. "Do you still feel disgust when you picture me?" she asked quietly. The question nailed me to the chair because the honest answer was complicated. Lying in that moment would have been the easy move. "I feel horror when my mind drags you into his scenes," I said. "I feel sick at him, at the idea I might somehow echo him. When it is just you and me, when that story does not intrude," I added. "I feel what I always felt, wanting you, liking you, nothing dirty. And I need help making that the only thing that shows up." She studied my face like she was searching for cracks. "Then that is what I am listening for on Friday," she said. "Whether that horror can be separated from me, or whether it stays fused." "If it stays fused, I am not staying," she finished, no wobble in her tone. Then she turned and finally lay down on the couch again. I stayed at the table for a long time after that. Phone in front of me, appointment confirmed, heart still racing. Nothing about our situation had magically fixed itself in one morning. The images were still there, hovering at the edges of my thoughts. The difference now was that she knew I was fighting them, not her. Later, when I walked past the door, I glanced at the bag again. It still sat there waiting, like a silent deadline on the floor. My hand drifted toward the strap, then pulled back before touching it. I knew that whether it moved out or back in would depend on Friday. And on whether I could finally prove that my disgust belonged to him and not to her.